Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of HomeKit Insider. You've got me, your host as always, Andrew O'Hara, and it was an exciting week this week because we had several Apple products being announced. It was an entire week of Mac focused events, and that's in the news. We're going to get to it, but first, let's jump right into things with a small tweak in tvOS 18.1. So this had been talked about during the beta process, and I never even saw anything mentioned after the launch of tvOS 18.1. But of course, our friend Sigmund Judge did note this, so he posted up on Twitter that Apple has launched the new watch list. So there is a difference between the watch list and the continue watching up next feed. So if you use Apple's TV app, you might know a little bit about what I'm talking about, but honestly the phrasing is still a little confusing. So here's the kind of the difference of what's going on. Your watch list is things that you want to watch that you haven't started yet, right? Could be a movie, a TV show. You're like, that looks good. I'm going to add it to my watch list. So that's everything that you have not started. Once you start that, it goes into your up next queue alongside everything else that you are watching. So you'll have a combination, I guess, then. I even said that wrong. It is so confusing. But your up next queue has everything you've started watching as well as the things that you haven't watched yet. So if that makes sense. Watch list is haven't started, up next, continue watching. That is new things plus existing things you're already watching, just merging them all together into one feed. It does make it confusing for sure. When you see an item that you want to see, so Apple's, promoting a new show, there's a new movie, you search for it, whatever, there's that add to watch list button, so it can sit there. So basically when you sit down for the night, you want to watch something, you can just go straight to the watch list and pick something new that you were waiting to do, and it doesn't get buried in your up next queue. If you ever done that, I've definitely added like a movie to my up next queue, and then it gets buried between the 30 shows we're watching, and then I forget about it until later. So this gives you a way to have some separation between them. And of course, this carries over to the other versions of the TV app as well, so whether you're on macOS, iPadOS, or iOS. Now let's go ahead and revisit those new Macs that launched this week. There was a whole bunch of them. We're going to leave the actual analysis and the M4 chips and all of that over for the Apple Insider podcast. Wes and William and everyone else, they can handle those. But I want to talk about something that I think is very interesting. Once again, Apple has snuck in Thread radios into its systems without nary a mention to anyone, right? So this has been happening for a while. Apple has multiple machines that it has put Thread radios in, and now that is including the new Mac Mini. And I'm going to assume the MacBook Pro and everyone else follows that same suit, but this was just confirmed for the Mac Mini. So now the new Mac Mini has Thread in it. This has been happening for a while. It's in here's a whole list. I'm going to run through them. iPad Pro with the M4, the iPad Air with the M2, the MacBook Air 15-inch, the MacBook Pro 14-inch with the M3 series, and that's 14 and 16-inch, of course, and then the M3 iMac all has Thread radios built into them, and now the new ones do too. So I think this is super interesting at why Apple is doing that, why including Thread radios just for the fun of it and not even mentioning it. My thought here is Apple is trying to lay the groundwork because we heard from companies like Nanoleaf, they're bringing those new lights that they had recently launched in Walmart. And we actually had a listener reach out and say, hey, is Nanoleaf going away from Thread? No. They're not going away from Thread, but no one really knows what it is and has necessarily the devices in the home to make Thread useful. So what I see here is Apple putting Thread into people's homes without them necessarily realizing it, and then being able to turn that on, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you already have Thread devices in your home. Your HomePod, your Apple TV already do it. Your Mac can as well, and that goes to your iPad. Apple's publicly said it for the iPhone, and they just enabled direct-to-device communication with iOS 18, I believe, for Thread radios. So Apple's been doing a lot of stuff with Thread, building that out. So what I hope is going to happen is Apple's going to launch its new smart home device. What has been recently described, by the way, as one of those vintage iMacs that had kind of like the round base, the metal arm, and then a screen on the top. I love that design, like a lot. So I'd be super happy to see Apple bring that back for its smart home display thing. It'd be very cool and retro at the same time. So it sounds like Apple could like launch that, include that Thread stuff, and really push the smart home narrative, and that they're going to add all these, new devices they're going to support, Matter support, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, also at the same time, we can just turn on Thread radios for any product that you bought in the last 2 years, 3 years, whatever it has been at this point. So that's my personal theory that I'm going to stick with. We'll see if it pans out, but that is what I'm really hoping happens here. But we will see soon enough, because it sounds like 2025 is going to be the year of the Apple smart home. Outside of Apple's own news, we have a bunch of other news for the week, starting with LifX. LifX is joining the many other companies in launching permanent outdoor lights. We have seen these from basically all of the companies now. Like any big player in the smart lighting space has a set of these lights. And so far, they've all been very good. The few that I have tested out personally, I have the Govee ones that are Matter enabled on the outside of my house. These sound like they are just as adequate of a solution. So they are Matter over Wi-Fi. So they still have Matter support. We'll show in the Home app, all of that. It is a 30 light strand, which is about 50 feet. They are also, which I do like that they're doing this, they've broken it down into 2 strands in the box. So there's one that is 25 foot and another that is 25 foot. So if you have like a split house or something that it makes sense, you can actually use one of the extensions. There are 2 10-foot extension cables in the box. You could gap these to hit different parts of your house depending on the structure. There's so much variation in the sizes of homes that I think it really makes sense to do something like this. So I think that's really interesting how they did that. But 50-foot length, 30 lights, it can be expanded up to 120 lights or 200 feet. So 200 feet of coverage if you max this out with additional extensions. Stick and go adhesives, so you can just press them on. I went with the stick and go style adhesives. Most of them just contain 3M adhesive. As long as it's a slightly warm day, you don't want to put it up when it's cold because then nothing will stick. But as long as it's a decently warm day, right, those adhesives will stick on there. But if you prefer, you can go a more permanent option and go with screws. They include little clips and screws in the box, so you could do that instead. Honestly, not too bad at all. These are available through Home Depot, so you can possibly go into a store and pick these up. $200. These are, I think, cheaper than the Govee ones were when I got mine, but it's definitely a shorter strand than what I'm currently working with at our house. Next in the news, Rise. Rise makes those really cool smart gardens. They have their new Rise Garden 3, and I want to tell you all the cool things about it, but I can't because I cannot find actual PR on this. So the last PR that Rise Gardens had put out was in January of 2023 when they launched their current or their last gen Rise Garden system, and it was great. I really, really liked it. Worked incredibly well. I've got one. I've used it. It's awesome. They launched their new Rise Garden 3, and aside from some physical changes, I can't quite tell what was changed. I'd love if they had a breakdown of differences between the Rise Garden they had before and the new Rise Garden 3, but I just can't find anything. The biggest thing I can maybe guess is it's a little more modular, but it was modular before. You could go with a 1, 2, or 3 level system, and you can do that here too. So I'm not quite sure how they really differ in terms of features. I don't think anyone's going to go out and buy a new one because they are still fairly expensive. But a couple things I did notice is before, the body of it was wood and then the shelves themselves were metal. Now the shelves and the extensions, all of that is metal. So the wood arms that went up the sides, that's gone. But they still kept the sustainability in the wood in there. It now just makes up the cupboard on the bottom. This I appreciate because on mine, the door, like, I can't figure out how to describe it exactly, but it's a thin piece of metal, right? And if you pull it from the top, like there's a magnet, it just wiggles a little bit, and it's not super sturdy. So I can see these wooden doors being a little bit more rigid and opening and closing and feeling a little bit more solid. But it still looks really nice. You get the white one with like that wood on the bottom. I think it looks really great and it's going to fit into a lot of homes. But yeah, grow produce year round. They have really expanded their seed offerings. So there are strawberries, peppers, different types of peppers, jalapenos and bell peppers. There are flowers that you can go with. There's a huge variety of things you can pick up here, and they've really improved those offerings. But you can also like start your own seeds. We're going into winter right now, but going into the spring, you can use this to kind of start your garden and then transplant them outside too. So it's a really cool way to do that. So they got a lot of perks here on these things. My favorite is using them for lettuce and just having fresh salad perpetually, because then you just keep peeling it back and they keep growing again. Eventually you just got to start over because the roots and everything get a little unwieldy, but it's a great way to keep fresh produce for salads and other, smaller vegetables. But there's a lot of variation in these things. They also are doing a launch promo. This is not something they reach out to me about, but they are 25% off during this launch window. Links in the show notes, but they got through their site as well as Amazon and different purchase options, including like a subscription plan with more perpetual plans and everything like that. So you guys do you. Next in the news, CozyHome Air Vent. I'm pretty excited about this one, and I 100% will be picking up one. This is kind of what we had talked about on the podcast a while back, which is a smart air vent that can help improve airflow to a room. So if you have a room in your home that's a little bit towards like the outskirts or something and has just bad circulation through your HVAC system, this replaces your air vent and uses fans to cool air into the room, whether it's cool air or warm air. So you're not getting, enough movement in your temperature. This is going to help that by pulling it through your HVAC system into that room. Now there's a bunch that do this. Flare is one of the big ones, but the new one from CozyHome is the first one that I have seen that actually supports Apple Home. I'm not sure if this is exactly Apple Home or Matter, but I'm pretty sure it's they advertise it with the Home app, and they advertise it saying HomeKit. So I believe it's HomeKit native with an option for Matter. Maybe I've seen a couple websites say Matter, but I don't see anything on their website saying Matter. So a little up in the air, but frankly, it works with HomeKit, so that's all I really care about, like confirmed. There's not a big level of control here, like you can't set a temperature or anything in Apple Home, but you can at least turn it on and off and control the airspeed and all of that. So I think that is still fantastic. They say that fans have a 65,000 hour rating. I did some math. That gives you about 7.5 years of use if you ran this fully 24/7. Of course, you shouldn't need to do that. You can set up some simple automations that will disable this when you leave and turn it on when you come home, or even using automations to turn it on when you are in the room, turn it off when you're outside of the room, or maybe part of a bedtime scene to cool it or warm it at night when you're going to bed, anything like that. This is a personal problem for me, but these are just like your standard in-floor vents, also in-wall vents, but it doesn't work specifically well for people who have the baseboard vents. If you guys have seen those, that they're at that like 30-degree angle, yeah, these don't work for those. But I have a plan. I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to make a simple wooden box that's going to enclose. I'm just going to get some extra baseboard trim and put it around and just fit it right in nice and neat around the edge of this thing, so that it's basically keeping the same angle of the air vent that was there before, but give me this airflow. So I'm picking one of these up. I think this is going to fix the problem that I have had in our one home office that gets very chilly and then never gets warm. It doesn't fix the windows that I probably still need to replace, but at least it helps with the terrible airflow in that room. So this is an instant buy for me. They're $100, which I don't know, maybe if we're looking at like the pure technology aspect of this, of literally just a fan that turns on and off, maybe it's on the high side. But considering that there's nothing else that is like this and works specifically for Apple users, I'm okay paying that little bit extra money. So this is a win to me. Tapo, so the TP-Link brand, Tapo, is coming out with a new IR repeater that works with Matter. I'm always confused how TP-Link's brands go because there's like the Casa line that had like a couple HomeKit products, and there's the Tapo line that also has something similar going on. So I still don't know the distinction between the two of them, but this falls under the Tapo brand, and essentially it allows you to control any IR device inside of the Home app thanks to Matter. So these could be AC units, they could be fans, they could be old school TVs. Personally, I have a Dyson that these are useful for. So I have like an older Dyson. You're able to use like the remote to turn it on and off, fan up and down, temperature up and down. So even for heating, you can program that to use this thing. So that way you can still send all those IR commands, but you can do it just using your voice. You can do it using any scenes, automation, anything like that. So you can turn older IR based devices into smart home devices. Wonderful. I know not everyone has a lot of kind of IR devices still floating around their homes, but if you do, something like this is going to prove to be quite useful. So like I said, it works via Matter. There are others on the market. So we talked about one from Nature. It's like a Japan company. It looked like a stone. That was the Nano Remo Lapis, something along those lines, if I recall. But it's a little rock thing that you held in your hand, or not held in your hand. I'm just looking at my hand, but put it on your counter, and it looks a little bit more natural, hence the brand Nature, and doesn't stick out too much. This looks more like a smart homey type device. Like it's white and black. So it's got a white base, cord out the back, black glossy top to it. So I don't love the look here. It's fine. It's what it is. We're going to go with it. Pricing doesn't seem too bad, but we're converting from Japan, I believe, because it's only up for pre-order. I have not gotten any PR for this yet, so this is still early. I don't even know if this was officially announced, but it is up for pre-order. It's the H110, Tapo H110. Amazon says this is shipping on November 22nd, so a good 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks or so from now. This thing could be going out. If I get additional information, I'd be happy to cover it for you guys here on the podcast in a future episode. Okay, let's wrap this thing up, bring it home with a listener question. So we had someone write in, I don't know if this is a real name or a Twitter name, but ASAP Good Enough. I don't want to make fun of a name because a name is a name, but I couldn't tell if like it was ASAP Good Enough, ASAP is Good Enough, or this is a real name. But thank you for writing in regardless. And we're going to talk about smart home vacuum cleaners because we haven't in a little bit. We've been in this holding pattern waiting for Apple to kind of formally adopt them. Apple said it was coming in iOS 18, but even 18.1 came out and Apple didn't even include it in the very verbose release notes that focus on everything else that had come out. Now we're beta testing 18.2 and we still don't have anything official. They just have not confirmed where they are with these rollouts, and I'm not quite sure why. It's led to a lot of speculation on podcasts like this. But because of that, we've been just waiting because there's third parties that are involved in launching robotic vacuum cleaners that are going to work with Matter, and they announced it, like Roborock actually was certified. They were the very first one to have a certified robotic vacuum cleaner, like the S8 Pro Max V Ultra, something like that. And it's not released yet. Like the update isn't out yet for the vacuum cleaner or necessarily HomeKit. So it's this weird back and forth game that we've been playing. But that'll come into picture here in a second. So ASAP wrote in and saying that they have not kept up with robotic vacuum cleaners and mops because they hadn't been on the market until now, which is cool. I get you. We talk about these a lot on the show, and if you're not in the market for one, you don't really care about these little nuanced differences between all of the ones that have been launching, and we're frankly going to get a bunch more, I'm sure, in like 2 months here when we get into CES. But they are looking for one, and they're giving me a list of criteria. So they're looking for one that'll clean hard floors, as well as some rugs. They don't have any pets, just messy children. They would love to be able to hook it up to the water line and the drain so they never have to refill or empty it. They also have HomeKit and Matter as a priority. They don't care as much about the manufacturer apps as long as they support HomeKit. but they also are looking for one that is in the budget range. So is there anything out there that's going to meet those needs? Well, the thing is, in the short term, very few options. The reason why I say in the short term is because Matter is going to be new to robotic vacuum cleaners. So we're not going to have a ton of these out of the gate. I mean, everyone is still struggling to figure this out. Everyone has like announced it, but no one has launched it. Ecovacs, Roborock, and many, many others have just kind of waffled on where support of this is. And I think that when this is fully finalized and we actually see products shipping with Matter, I think it's going to be on flagship units. Like they're not going to prioritize this new technology on an entry level bot. So I think if the budget and HomeKit are going to be your two top priorities and two musts, I'm not sure you're going to find an exact option, let alone with your other criteria. That's at least my gut right now. So a couple things that you can kind of work with here, give up a little bit. Maybe if we don't find one that connects into your system and has kind of Matter support, there's an option there that I can recommend. That would be a SwitchBot. And it's kind of maybe where I will go entirely with my recommendation. So you can get a version of the SwitchBot. Like they have some basic ones that don't have the whole all-in-one situation. So I think there's like the K10, K10 Plus, S10. You could go with one of their other versions, and they do have Matter support, but it's like on and off. So it's not full Matter support. They're kind of building it in as they're like backdooring it in. They're turning it on as a switch. So it's literally just an on and off switch to run your vacuum. So yes, it works with Matter, but it's only on and off. So I know people use the SwitchBot products for that, and you can do that like right now today. That'll work for you. But I also know SwitchBot is really good about supporting Matter, so I can see them adding more verbose support to their more affordable options just via software updates to improve the Matter support that they already have. That is an option to go with the cheaper one, and they have one that is around like $500 or so that would do hard floors and rugs. The only problem is it's not going to connect directly to your drainage system. That is a higher end feature that's going to be hard to find on an entry level model. So SwitchBot does have their actual floor cleaning robot S10. That is $1,200, so it's pricey. But they do have a $400 coupon on it right now, so that brings it down to $800. Still expensive, but you're going to get Matter. You're going to get the drain hookup and the water hookup, so you can take care of all of that. And it's going to give you Matter, Apple Home, everything like that to go through. So that's probably your most affordable option right now that I know of, that it's going to give you some flexibility there and check off almost everything on your list except for the budget price. The other options, if you're not as worried about price, again, I know that's a big hang up for people, but if we're looking a little bit outside of price, I would go with the flagship from Roborock and Ecovacs. Those two are going to be your biggest heavy hitters. The S8 Max V Ultra one that I had mentioned, that is the one that I personally use for the most part, and I think it does a fantastic job. They do have one that has a water hookup and everything, so you can go that route. Never have to worry about it. Very simple to do. I love those options. Actually, really jumping around, but going back to SwitchBot, I really like how they did theirs. We talked about like their humidifier they had before, where you could actually have it bring the water. Your RoboVac can sit in a corner and do its thing, and then when your humidifier runs low, your vacuum can wake up, go to its docking station, pick up water, and bring it over to your humidifier. Like, that is fantastic, and you're also getting the Matter and the HomeKit support. So that's really cool. It's honestly got me head tilting a little bit at picking one of those things up instead of the Roborock one, because I love how that works. You also don't have to have a ton of room. It sounds like you might have room But like the water stations can be very small, so then you like tuck underneath a counter. You barely have to see them. Tap into like a sink and a drain in your bathroom. You can just go right in there, go underneath your, not a desk, but your counter, whatever you have in your bathroom, fill up and then leave. So they're a little bit more out of the way that way too. So there's some options, but nothing is going to hit all of those boxes. Oh, it's crazy talking about all these like home renovation stuff. I have been debating, like, we're building a new pantry, like dining room situation, and I really have been toying with actually building in my robotic vacuum cleaner into our dining room cabinets. Like, there's going to be a coffee nook in the middle, storage for pots and pans down the left, and some more cabinets on the right. And I really, really, really am thinking about making a little cubby to house the robotic vacuum cleaner. And I'm trying to debate if this is a good idea or not, because I'd have to build it in a way that wouldn't look weird, right? If it had to come in and out, but that was also a little bit modular. If I decide to kick Roborock to the side and switch over to SwitchBot, or if I wanted, like, the new Dbot stuff is very cool too, so I switch over to Ecovacs. But there's also Dreamy and the Eufy ones. Like, I'm constantly testing these things out, so I don't want to commit fully to building something in place and not being able to swap it out. But these are kind of like the constant home renovation battles that I know people deal with. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about the new bed that I'm making Harrison. And I'm just starting it, so I don't want to over spoil everything that I've been working on. But this is probably one of my favorite projects that I've done in a long time. And I'm super, super excited to show you the video that I did to go along with it of making this thing from a sketch on the iPad to real life. And it's kind of amazing how a lot of this technology has helped that come along. And then some of the smarts that are going to go inside of it. So stay tuned for that in a forthcoming episode. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out this week. A little bit of a light episode. You just had to hear me banter with myself, so hope that was okay. So if you guys all could do me just a big solid, that would help me out immensely. Give this podcast a 5-star rating in whatever your podcast player of choice is. Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all of them. If you want to watch the video version of that, which is me looking at a camera, you can go to youtube.com/HomeKit Insider and watch it there. Otherwise, if you guys have questions or any guests that you want to see on a future episode of the show, you can go ahead and drop me a line over on Twitter at Andrew_OSU or Andrew@appleinsider.com, or just leave a comment on the video over on YouTube. Otherwise, stay tuned. I'll catch you guys in the next episode.